Hi everyone. In today's video, I am going to be talking about the disadvantages of doing a PhD by publication. In my previous video, I did talk about the factors to consider before deciding to undertake a PhD by publication, and I've also made a video on the advantages of doing a PhD by publication. You can find the link to those videos in the description section below. Please make sure you watch all these videos. In today's video, I will talk about a few disadvantages of doing a PhD by publication instead of doing a conventional PhD or what we call as a monograph. Now, doing a PhD by publication may involve lengthy time frames. The reason is that because you are trying to publish papers and at the same time trying to include those published papers in the thesis, and publishing papers may take long times depending of course on the journal. The highly reputable journals sometimes do have long waiting days, so it takes sometimes months to get reviewers comments including resubmissions, and then awaiting acceptance takes another few weeks, awaiting proofs, awaiting publication. Overall sometimes it takes more than a year. So consequently, the process of writing the article through to receiving it in print can prove somewhat frustrating and wearing when superimposed on a student's day-to-day research workload. Here you can see on your screen, it shows the timeline in days from submission of the first article for different stages of the publication process of the first author's doctoral publication, illustrating how the demands of publishing are distributed widely, if not regularly, throughout the PhD candidacy. However, publishing timeframes are less daunting when viewed from the perspective of the interval from article submission to its acceptance, which ranges from about 40 to 350 days and averaged about 180 days for the articles, 9 articles that were used to make this graph. So this graph was made on the progress of 9 journal articles through stages of publication from the date of submission of the first article. So you may not have to accept this graph completely or on its face value, but it gives you an idea that it does take time for you to publish papers and then include those published papers in the thesis. The second disadvantage is engagement with the academic community. Now, the commitment of time required for publication per se, as I showed you in the slide before, in addition to the commitment to the normal coursework of doctoral research itself, limits the extent to which students pursuing PhD by publication can engage in a broader set of activities in the immediate academic community of which they are part of. For example, an author may make a conscious decision to focus his or her efforts on publications and limit his or her activities in school and university communities. In doing so, he or she forfeits some of the potential benefits which attracts them to PhD studies, particularly those associated with being part of the academic community. Now, usually each student will make their own individual choice, usually in discussion with the supervisors as well as with others about how to allocate their time. These choices will become constrained by personal and financial circumstances. The process of PhD by publication is likely to add to the workload of supervisors as well, across the period of the PhD, depending on the extent to which they are prepared to support their students in pursuing publications. Now, supervisors sometimes are prepared to varying degrees depending on their roles and other commitments to read draft versions of the articles and to assist in responding to reviewers' comments. Sometimes advice on how to deal with rejection and sustain momentum can be critical to achieving eventual publication. Of course, publishing progressively throughout the period of doctoral enrollment is likely to spread the reading and reviewing workload of supervisors more evenly throughout the period of doctoral candidacy, rather than demanding major input in the period immediately prior to submission, as is often the case with traditional PhDs. Another disadvantage of pursuing PhD by publication is that once an article has been submitted, there is a limited scope for further developing or changing the thinking and approach it represents and the conclusion it reaches. Whilst there is some opportunity to modify elements of text, add further references and insert graphics at the time of addressing reviewers' comments, the substantive content of the article will not be revised unless the reviewers have required it. This reality is perhaps the most problematic for articles submitted early in the research process and suggests that the timing of submission of such articles need careful consideration and discussion with supervisors. Especially if you have conducted a literature review, maybe 3 years back, and now when you're submitting your thesis, it has already been 3 years, you may have to update your literature review, although the paper on the literature review is already published. However, given that evolution in thinking, change on the basis of evidence, and attendant debates are fundamental to research process, the evolution of argument in a PhD by publication can be represented as both necessary and desirable. The particular challenge to students pursuing PhD by publication is to articulate any such changes in ways which enhance rather than diminish the coherence of the thesis and its eventual overall outcomes. Finally, given the timelines associated with publication, it is likely that submission of articles in the later phase of the doctoral process will mean that a student's thesis may be undergoing examination at the same time as the articles are undergoing review. This may result in the need to make revisions to both documents separately and may make reconciling differing reviewer and examiner perspectives problematic. While the reviewers who are reviewing your journal paper may approach your research with a different view compared with reviewers who are examining your thesis. So you must be alert to these differing reviews and stick to your stand, which will be based on the evidence of the data that you have collected. Clearly, it is more efficient if the student brings all publications to the stage of acceptance prior to thesis submission. So guys, these are some of the disadvantages of doing a PhD by publication. Like I mentioned in my previous video, I have done a PhD by publication. Can be a rewarding experience when you are publishing papers. It's very exciting, but also you have to make sure when you are submitting your thesis, your final version of the thesis, the contents of the thesis should be updated to the time that you are submitting, especially the literature review, especially the findings, the discussion section. They should be relevant, contemporary, and not outdated. So thank you for watching today's video. Thank you for supporting the channel. I'll see you soon with my next video. Please make sure you watch the other videos in my channel as well to update your knowledge about doing a PhD by publication. Bye for now.